Hello, and welcome back to the Brilliant Fools podcast. My name is Adam Green, and this week we are talking about money and cash and the way to look at it from a more biblical point of view. Today, on this Technical Tuesday, we're going to look specifically at cash flow and how to make it better, how to increase it, right? And I want to go into a few things regarding cash flow. The way it's typically looked at, typically seen by the world, even us as Christians, when we're looking at it in the flesh, and then in the way that we can look at it from a more biblical point of view. I want to start, first of all, by one of the typical ways when I've worked with small businesses. It's kind of an easy go-to. We need cash and we need cash now. Let's go get a business line of credit or just draw from our business line of credit. A lot of times, in fact, I would say the majority of the time, this was to make payroll more than anything else, to pay their people. I don't mind that, and I don't think there's anything inherently right or wrong about it. It's just a thing to be aware of, is that a line of credit is going to be a performance-based kind of thing. Any kind of debt is a performance-based vehicle. And what I mean by that is when you get debt, when you bring it in, you have a responsibility to repay that debt. Again, there's nothing wrong with having debt and repaying it, especially if you're able to do it. But as Scripture says, the borrower is slave to the lender. So the more you're doing it, the more you're hamstrung, and you could be using it for other things, cash that comes in. But you might need to do it sometimes, especially in certain industries. That may be more of a factor than in other industries. But understand it's performance based. I think this correlates to the way that the more we live in the flesh, even if it's to try to do good things, but we're trying to do good things based on our performance as opposed to based on Christ's work and his finished work and his working in and through us, the more we rack up debt for ourselves. It isn't wages, it's death, and it leads to death. And I think that's the same thing that can happen when you are building debt in a business. There are good things that can come from it, but you're kind of playing with fire. And as soon as that performance fails, then you fail, or you have a very large chance of failing in the business. Relieve some stress and try to stay away from that would be my advice. But if you need to do it, then absolutely you can. There are some other ways to do or increase cash flow that maybe aren't always thought of right away. And those ways are things like tracking, which kind of seems, I don't know if that's seems dumb or not, but if you just track things, review what your expenses are. If you have a bunch of non-essential expenses, you can cut some of those, and that'll increase your cash flow. If you are paying a lot, especially you're paying a lot more for potentially an inferior materials, then see if you can pay less for better materials, provide more value to your client, your customer, and spend less on what you're doing and increase your cash flow that way. Unintuitively, sometimes you need to pay more for your materials or for the tools that you're using. And what I would liken that to is, let's say you're in some sort of trade, some sort of construction industry, and you buy the cheapest impact driver that you can because it's cheap. You can buy it now, make more money, and okay, great. But if it's wearing out on you after every 2 jobs and you have to keep buying another one, and it's $50 each time you're buying one as opposed to buying that $100 or $150 impact driver, let's say you buy that $150 impact driver and then it lasts you 5 jobs, 10 jobs. usually it's going to be 10 or more jobs. It's going to last you a lot longer. You actually increase your cash flow in the long run by getting a better quality product. So in general, quality over quantity is going to increase your cash flow. In the short term, you may have to choose quantity over quality. You may have to choose to go with that cheaper product just to be able to make it to where you can build up the reserves and get the better product. And now you can start moving a little bit, a little farther forward, a little farther forward. And then the more you can spend on those quality products, the better off you're going to be. It's kind of like a flywheel. You're just trying to get that flywheel moving at the start. Okay, let's just save cash where we need to, and then focus on getting the higher quality when we have the reserves to do it. Forecasting, trying to understand what your cash is doing now and what it can be doing in the future, can give you a lot. Building up some cash reserves can help you with your cash flow. These are more tracking things, though. These are not necessarily immediate direct cash flow increases, if that makes sense. It's like a diet. As soon as you start tracking the calories you're putting in, it's like immediately you start changing the way that you do things. So budgeting, forecasting, that can be a great tool to start increasing cash flow just because you start paying attention to where your money's going. Now, I want to spend most of the rest of the time on a particular area, which is going to be the sales portion, the income portion of cash flow. Because honestly, the way that I've seen it, this is where the majority of cash flow issues come in. The sales are not enough. Now, if you're paying too much for your supplies to be able to make the sale, the cost of goods sold, right? The cost of your sale. If you're paying too much for that, then that also will lead very much so and very quickly to, it'll lead to a failure in cash flow. So you need to identify that. But if you know you've got a good quality and good value cost of sales, so your materials are good, your tools are good, and you're still having cash flow issues, then likely it goes back to the sales portion of it. Are you charging what you should be charging? And how do you increase those sales? How do you add value even while you're doing the sales? To understand that, I want to go into a little bit about just help you understand the accounting side of things. I've been in accounting for many, many years, and let's take a look at how accountants think about things. So I'm going to pull up this profit and loss statement. It's probably hard to see, and that's fine. All you need to really know is that here at the top is where the revenue comes in, and then underneath it is where your expenses come in. Okay, so you've got your revenue, you've got your expenses. From an accounting standpoint, we're looking at each category of revenue. All right, here are all my categories of revenue, and then I've got this total bucket that all the money goes into, right? And I'm going to pull that money out of the bucket, and I'm going to put it into all these smaller buckets, hopefully smaller buckets of advertising, depreciation, supplies, rent, maintenance and repairs, et cetera, just other things that go into it. And income tax, things like that, if that's something that you have to pay out of your business. So this is your basic profit and loss statement. To me, it's almost easier to look at it from a budget standpoint. So this is like a personal budget kind of deal. You've got your income, and it's over here on the left side. So all my income, I've got take-home pay, I've got, freelance investment, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter where the income comes from. Here's my income bucket. And then I've got all these expense buckets, and hopefully what's happened is by the time I've taken all the money out of the income bucket and put them into the expense buckets, I haven't emptied out the expense or the income bucket. And maybe I can refill it to be able to put more in there. But what do I have? What do I have if I just look at it that way? Okay, I'm taking out of this bucket, putting it into here. I take it out of this bucket, put it into here. Well, I've got a bucket list, right? I mean, this is basically what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my profit and loss statements or my budgets. Either way, I'm looking at a bucket list. I'm looking at, okay, let me just make sure before time runs out or before the money runs out, I can put it everywhere it needs to go and get all the things done that need to get done. And um, that is approaching it, I believe, from a mindset of lack, honestly. It's a mindset that, yes, I may believe God is the provider, but I'm still just looking at that bucket and I'm waiting for that bucket to be filled again, right? And when that bucket starts to get empty, then I'm praying, okay, God, please fill the bucket, fill the bucket, fill the bucket. Um, and it's kind of a scary place to be sometimes. What if there was a different way to look at it? Um, and I think there is, because I don't think money's meant to be like that. I don't think it's meant to be filled up and emptied, filled up and emptied. If I take a bucket of water and I take a cup out of it, and that bucket goes down by a cup. But if I have a stream or a river of water and I take a cup out of it, it doesn't go down at all, does it? Right? This here is actually a canal. I may have seen this specific canal even. This is in Idaho Falls, Idaho. And every year, these canals fill up with water. They fill up with water so the farmers can feed their fields. Excuse me, sorry about the coughing. But so the farmers can feed their fields, feed the crops with water as they need it. And they take it from a specific place. So you got a canal there going by a farm. You got this canal here at the bottom of the screen going by a disc golf basket in a park. I've actually played disc golf and thrown into this very basket. I also know people who have thrown into this water and immediately lost their disc because it just gets carried downstream. But what happens in the fall? In the fall, all these leaves fall down and this canal is now just filled with leaves. There's no water in it in the fall. It dries up. Man, I wish my throat would stop drying up, but it dries up because the source is cut off. These canals get cut off from their source. So what was once flowing with water dries up. How does this relate to our business? Well, I believe that what happens in our businesses, think about it. Let's look at some other ways that we could actually increase our cash flows, okay? And things that I hear people talking about all the time. Some of the first things that tend to come to mind: invoicing and accounts receivable. Make sure my clients and customers are paying me. Hey, I'm running low on cash. Okay, how much receivables do I have? Well, let me go call Peter, Paul, and Mary and make sure that they're paying me what they're supposed to be paying me, right? Okay, so maybe I should require some upfront payments. Think of a service industry, HVAC. Okay, now I have a service call. Before I even go out there, you're gonna pay me something. So I increase what I need. What's happening here is I'm connecting to the source, right? But often what happens, especially with that increasing the receivables and making sure to call those past due accounts and get them to pay their money, I disconnect from the source. And I only connect to the source when I need that flow. This is the same thing with these canals through Idaho Falls. They connect to the source. And let me tell you, the source is huge. If you're watching on video, let me show you that. The source is the Tetons. The Tetons, all the snow melt and everything feeds into the Snake River, which then flows through the city, and then it feeds all the canals. And the more they get, the more the Tetons get snow and precipitation, the more those canals get filled. But once that stops, or once they're shut off from the source, that's it. They're shut off. I mean, there's no more, they dry up. There's no more water flowing. Okay. So staying connected to the source is a big portion of this. And in a business, that's staying connected with our customers. And we want to make sure that we are treating them well and treating them right. And the better we treat them, the better we get paid and the more we increase cash flow. It's a very different kind of mindset to look at. And I would relate that to when Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself, right? I mean, you're loving people and loving them well, loving them with the love of God. We love because he first loved us. And that right there increases our cash flow, which is kind of weird, but it's a practical way to do it from a kingdom standpoint, from a biblical point of view. There are other things that you can do if you want some ideas. You could offer some discounts for early payment. You know, if you pay early, then we'll discount it by, 5%, 10%, something like that. Most places that do that, what they don't tell you is that they're discounting it to the price that they want to charge you. And actually, if you don't pay early, you're going to pay a higher price than what they would normally want to charge. So just keep that in mind. That's starting to become known a little bit more now too. So that may, customers may like it, may not. It all depends. But part of loving people, I think, is easing that friction of being able to pay. The easier that I can pay it, the more I feel like you care about me and you care about getting paid for what you've done and the quality, the value of what you've done. You believe in it. So if it's easy for me to pay online and pay immediately and just get it done, that's great. If you have a technician come out, if you're in a trade or a service business, you have a technician come out and they've got that card reader on hand and they can just go ahead and take the payment immediately there. That's great. That's wonderful. The more you can do that with people, I think the better, the more we show them that we do care about them and we are thinking about it from their point of view and really truly loving people for that, right? So increasing our, not necessarily our love for people, but the way that we show it, our intentionality in showing our love for people will help to increase our cash flow. And it'll help us to think of things that maybe we wouldn't otherwise, which I would encourage you to do. What will you think of to increase your cash flow? Let's go back, though, really quickly to, and I'm going to skip in and out of the high level versus ground level applications here. But let's go back to this being connected to the source idea, okay? If money truly is meant to work as a tool, and that tool is supposed to work as cash flow, it's actually supposed to be flowing, not built up and then depleted, built up and depleted. That kind of, that's not steadiness. That's not consistency. But if it's consistently flowing, how do we consistently flow? Moving on from these canals, right? And by the way, we had the bucket list, which is the way that most accountants are, whether they call it that or not, that's the way that most of us accountants are looking at these profit and loss and budgets. When we look at it as cash flow, I mean, what do we end up with? We end up with a flow chart. Isn't that fun? Probably not. That's a super nerdy thing to say. I'm going to move on. This here, in this next picture that I'm looking at, is the mighty Mississippi. It is a massive river, a huge river, especially the closer you get to the Gulf where it ends and flows out. I mean, it is a huge, huge river. You take a cup out of the Mississippi, you're not taking anything out of anywhere. So how do you get to that point? Well, let's think about it. Stay connected to the source, right? What is our ultimate source of everything, anything and everything? It's God. It's God. In James 1:17, it says, every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. It's him. Our source for everything is him. John 15, Jesus says, abide in me and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. That's John 15:4. He's talking about he is the vine and we are the branches. So we stay in him. We stay connected to him. We stay connected to our source. The beginning of John, it talks about everything was made through him, through Christ. And without him, nothing was made that was made. He is the source of everything. So if we truly want to be connected to the source, we stay connected to him. There's one more analogy I want to make with this Mississippi River thing here, and then we'll wrap up. But this mighty Mississippi, would you believe it if I told you I've walked across it before? Walked across it. Seems hard to do. And it's because I was so connected with Jesus that I walked on water. No, it wasn't that. No. This is the source of the mighty Mississippi. If you're looking at it on a video, hopefully you are, and not just listening to it. But there's a sign that says, here, 1,475 feet above the ocean, the mighty Mississippi begins to flow on its winding way 2,552 miles to the Gulf of Mexico. This is in Minnesota. This is the headwaters of the Mississippi. And there's a bunch of rocks right up there at the headwaters. There's a lake, kind of a small lake, but there's a lake up there. And you can walk right across the headwaters of the Mississippi. And it's just kind of a little creek, stream, more or less. I mean, there's not much to it at all when you're at the source. And it doesn't feel like much. And that can happen a lot, especially as we're getting started in business. And if you are at that point where you're getting started, don't get discouraged, because those headwaters, by the time they reach the Gulf of Mexico, they are a huge, huge river. And I believe that one of the ways that God does that for us is the more we stay connected to him, and then he brings others into our lives as well. He brings others that feed into us. And this is a map here of all these different tributaries that feed into the Mississippi River. I think I'm using that word right, tributaries. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But you see it all the way up in Minnesota, and 2,500 miles away from the Gulf of Mexico, where it starts, little tiny creek, little tiny stream, and then you've got all these different rivers that feed into it. The Missouri, the Platte, the James, the Minnesota, the Des Moines, rivers that are feeding into the Ohio River, rivers feeding into other rivers that are feeding into the Mississippi. And then by the time it ends in the Gulf of Mexico, it is a massive river. And God will use others to feed into us constantly and consistently. If we want to increase cash flow in our business, and we want to do it in a way that God has set things up in his kingdom and the way he runs things, this is a lot of how it's done. We stay connected to him first and foremost. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, with everything that you are. And then love your neighbor as yourself. Treat the money not as something to be hoarded, not as a bucket that we keep going back to God and say, will you fill this again? Will you fill this again? But let's just stay connected to the source, stay connected to him, stay connected to our clients and our customers, and love them, truly love them. And then we probably won't have to stay on them as much as far as the invoicing is concerned. We'll make it easier for them to do that because we care about them. We're going to do things, the world calls it upselling, right? Or cross-selling. You want fries with that? Instead of asking it from a standpoint of, okay, let's see if I can get more money, it's, hey, you know what? You just got a burger and fries go really well with a burger. So you want some fries with that? You're actually concerned about them and concerned about their experience being a high quality experience. If you're a plumber going in, I've done this before, and you see, yeah, okay, there's your toilet needed the flange replaced, and we've done that, or the fill valve. Usually it was like the fill valve needs to be replaced. Okay, we've done that. But what we also noticed along the way is that your water pressure is really high. and we need to replace the PRV if you don't want to have to replace this fill valve again. Now the world says that that's an upsell or a cross sell. You're adding something else. Excuse me. You're adding something else to what the client was going to get in the first place. But the way we look at it, and the way we looked at it, and the business I was in, very fortunate to be a part of, was this is going to save the client a lot in the long run, money and headache and everything. Let's go ahead and get it done now. It's going to have to be done at some point, so let's be concerned about it. Introducing new revenue streams. Be careful on this one because you can spread yourself too thin if you don't know what you're doing. But if you're a consultant, maybe you want to put together some online courses, some do-it-yourself kind of things, because people may not have the time. If you believe in what it is that you're consulting and what it is that you're maybe coaching somebody in, people may not have the time to engage with that, especially as a small business owner. You may not have the time to do that. So what if I set up a course online and you can do it at your own pace? So that's a different thing, and that may increase the revenues as well, from a standpoint of caring about other people, from a standpoint of really considering others. So take these things as ideas, not as gospel, okay? The gospel is what Christ has done and the work he's already done for us. And that's the beauty of it. He's already accomplished the work. He is the source. So there's no performance-based aspect of it when we abide in him. And he'll provide everything that's needed. Let's seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And then everything that we're looking for will be added to us. That can be a scary thing to do, honestly. And I can sit here and I can tell you this, and I have told you this for nearly half an hour now. If you've listened this long, congratulations. Man, putting it into practice is a completely different story, though. Completely different story. I put into practice the payment methods. I put into practice a lot of these things. They're not always easy to put into practice. And staying connected with my clients, that's not always easy to do either, especially the more work I have to do. So I'd like to hear from you, and I'd like to know, what ideas do you have, or what have you done? What have you seen done where people have stayed connected with clients, where you stay connected with your clients, with your people? And how have you seen cash flow affected because of that as well? And how do you stay connected to God? How do you stay connected with the Lord? I try to bring him into everything that I do with this podcast and wherever it's going to end up going. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with it in the end. I hope this has been beneficial to you and helpful. It blesses me just going through this and doing these things and letting people know what God is showing me and has shown me. And I pray that it blesses you as well. And until next time, thanks.